Well, welcome back, everybody. It's Leighton again, and you've made it now to our fourth session. And I got to tell you, I'm very excited for this session because this is a very unique session. There's so many participants on the webinar who have, either leading up to the event or even in the event have commented that I've spent years building this business, and now this pandemic breaks out and has it put at risk my dream of one day either passing that business on or maybe selling that business or maybe maybe expanding and acquiring another business. Well, we're fortunate that we have two experts in the industry that are on the buy side and the sell side of brokering those transactions. We have Scott Bushkie from Cornerstone. We have Gokul Padamanabhan, and both are doing, bringing expertise to the table. And so we're going to get all those questions answered. But before we get started, I really want to take an opportunity and thank all of our industry partners that have come alongside us, business mentors, Cornerstone Business Services and Cornerstone International Alliance, Core Group, All Davis Restoration, Ask Amy, and Ed and his team at the Restoration Lawyer, all have kind of helped to promote this event. So I just want to thank them. And I just want to remind everybody that we do host webinars every 2 weeks. And our next one coming up is really about sales. So in a couple of weeks, we have a webinar focused on how do you win the game of sales during this pandemic. And we have some really fantastic panelists coming. I want to just set the tone of our next panel. When I think about kind of we all know that we should probably be a little more physically active than we are right now, all cooped up. But when you grow muscles, we know that you need to strain them, and there has to be some pain and some tearing for that muscle to regrow and be stronger. And I think that's a great visual when we think about, is there an opportunity to come out of this whole period of time of strain stronger? So I want to start by introducing our panelists. Scott Bushkie, managing partner at Cornerstone Business Services, brings over 20 years of experience on the buy and sell side of transactions, as well as a robust valuation services offering. Gokul Padamanabhan is the owner of Restoration Brokers of America. Gokul has brokered the sale of over 200 restoration companies. So we're in good hands. So without further ado, I just want to maybe kick things off. Why don't we start with you, Gokul? And the question that I want to kick us off with, before I remind our participants to throw your questions in the chat, the first question is, what are some of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're selling their business? And maybe if you could season it in light of our current situation. Gokul, let's go to you, and then Scott, I'd like to come back to you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And thanks for having me today. I think it's very, very simple. I think one of the biggest mistakes, and I think Scott would probably agree with me, is people not planning. You got to plan this out 2-3 years in advance. And if you look at our office, folks that have planned their exit 2 years out, 3 years out, that we've been in conversation with and getting their business ready for sale, get about 30%, 25 to 30% more on their valuation in a 2 to 3 year period than someone that calls me when things are going so bad, that it's kind of like the last ditch call to our office to get out of it. So what I would recommend is plan just like you would anything else.
I think that's really interesting. And we'll come back to that. So if you're like me, you're a viewer, and you're saying like, well, what does that plan look like? We'll get to that. So thanks for serving up that teaser.
Yeah, absolutely.
Scott, same question to you. I mean, Scott, you've been in this industry for a couple of decades. You've brokered the sale of multiple companies in this space. Tell us, what are some of the biggest mistakes that people can make when they're thinking about selling their business, or they're moving to sell it? A lot of people are thinking about that right now. Tell us what some of those mistakes are from your experience, Scott.
Yeah, I would say, again, number one is, like Google talked about planning. It can't be said enough. But I think the other is value expectations. The number one reason why businesses don't sell on the open market, and Google and I were talking about this before, is that business owners just say, oh, I need this, or I think it's worth Y or X, and they don't really work with someone who's a professional to understand what's truly going on in the marketplace. What is my company truly worth in today's marketplace? Because buyers don't care what you want or what you need to live your ideal lifestyle. They care about the value drivers in your company and how much cash flow is kicking off and things along that line. So I think planning, setting realistic expectations, understanding what the business is worth, and then using the right team. And it's just not the M&A advisor like Gokul or I, but it's also the CPA. It's the attorney. Especially with attorneys, you could do everything right for 30 years in your business. Gokul and I could bring 4 different buyers to the table, but then you go and say, oh, I'm going to use the attorney who's a buddy of mine. I've known him for years. He does our collections. He set up my LLCs. Maybe he did my divorce, whatever it all is. And he doesn't do M&A, but he's a good guy. He knows me. I trust him. I'm going to bring him in to do this deal. And then he doesn't know, or she doesn't know what they don't know. They get ultra conservative, because if they get too aggressive or too lax, then you can come back on them and say, geez, why didn't you protect me here? Or if the deal, something doesn't, go right down the road, they can come back and hit their insurance or liability insurance, where if they go ultra conservative and protect you on everything, you'll go way far over to the right, way too far than what normal is. Well, then the deal blows up. Well, I was just protecting you, but they weren't serious, when really they're the ones who blew that deal up. So having the right M&A attorney, having the right M&A advisor around them, the right CPA, the right financial advisor, having that whole deal team, like I've said and I'll say before and again, is you only get one chance to sell your business, and you want to do it right. And again, this is kind of the analogy of brain surgery. You've had your family doctor for 30 years and got your physicals done by them, and they know you well, and they're a doctor, but are you going to go to your general practitioner who did your physicals for brain surgery? Probably not. You're going to go to that brain surgeon and then come back to your doctor afterwards for regular visits and things like that. And the same thing with M&A. It's the largest financial transaction most people ever do in their life, and it's very specialized, and they get one chance to do it right. And I would say the last piece is that our biggest competition is not are they going to go with me or Gokul or the other investment banker down the road? It's really the owner doing it themselves. And obviously that sounds self-serving for what he and I do, but I can tell you that is the biggest competition. Only about 20 to 30% of deals out there are professionally brokered or had professional representation. Otherwise, everybody's just I'll call my competitor down the street and see what happens.
Yeah. No, I think that's well said. So, no, thanks to both of you. It's a great way to kick things off here. And so, number of questions here, and so I want to try to get to all of them. Reminder to all the audience: if you have a question for Gokul or Scott, something that you'd love to learn about, from the valuation of the business to preparing to the tactics you should be doing right now to preserve the value of your company, the roadmap to rebuild. Let's get those questions in, because this is a unique opportunity to get both these experts on the line. So right off the bat. One of the things, and actually it came from an earlier conversation, Scott, that you and I were having, that I thought was a really interesting question to kind of roll around with, is there are acquirers with money right now. And a lot of them, I think we picture in our mind that they're kind of circling around like a vulture waiting for you to kind of die, when in reality, many of them might be seeing this whole opportunity as a stress test to say, how sustainable is this company? And I'm wondering, what is the right frame of mind from somebody who's wanting to think about their business as an asset? What's the right frame of mind to be thinking about this whole pandemic? Gokul, why don't we start with you?
I just did a LinkedIn post on this very topic, so very, very interesting. What is the right frame of mind? I think, I'm a finance guy by trade, so I would think of it as temporary. And I would encourage everybody to look at what their business is going to look like 2, 3, 4 quarters out. Right. And there's a really interesting article that Harvard did back in 2008-9. They went and looked at all the companies that came out of the recession and what did they do correct? And it was really interesting. And they found that companies that played a lot of defense did not come out when it came out of the recession. They could not grow back to their previous levels, and then they also found that companies that did a lot of offense, where maybe they were well capitalized, where they just played complete offense without a lot of strategy, also did not grow as fast coming out of the recession. Okay. And what they found was companies that had a little bit of defense and a little bit of offense, a more balanced approach came out ahead. And once the recession was over in 2009-10, they grew faster than anybody else within their industry. Again, this was a survey of about 3,000 companies in the country, and playing defense, playing offense is easy. I think for a lot of people, I think when entrepreneurs sit back and say, what do I need to grow my business? I think it's easy. But I think in an environment like this, most people are looking at defense more, and it's really interesting, what this article and what this research found is, companies that retain their employees but cut costs in other areas were much better suited coming out of this than entrepreneurs that looked at HR and people as the first bucket to go and cut, and I encourage a lot of my clients, we're talking about the same things. And I'm always telling them, look at HR as your last alternative and make sure that at least that your key employees and your key team members are intact coming out of it. And I think that would be the best advantage you can give yourself coming out of this. And it's good. We're going to come out of it. And it's a funny thing I feel with entrepreneurs, when things go bad, there's a sense that it could never get better, and that's not true. And when things get really good, there's a sense that it can never get bad, and that's not true either. The truth is somewhere in between. And so I encourage all my clients, when we're talking to them and we're having our Zoom meetings and our strategy calls, is, we prepare for the next 30, 60 days, have very modest goals, but try to keep your core team intact. And that's the message we're giving all our clients right now.
Yeah, well said. And it's interesting how easy it is as an entrepreneur to be either fatalistic or delusional. You kind of, where do you fit on that spectrum? And I'm sure, I don't know about everyone listening, but it probably depends on what day of the week I wake up, right? So that's well said. Scott, I'd love to get your perspective on that mindset. I think it was, I can't remember, it might have been a Michael Gerber statement, but it's really, there's a mentality that a person has to go through from going from being, in the business to on the business. And there's a mentality that I think we have to approach this pandemic with, if we really want to think about our business as an asset. So Scott, what's your perspective on that, just to build on what Gokul's saying?
Yeah, I would say, just like you mentioned, it's time to get out and work on the business, because if you just stay in the business and put out fire, there's a lot of fires to put out right now, a lot of unique things continuing. If you're just worried about that, you're never going to get above the business to really move the company forward or make any meaningful, thought processes or statements for the company. So I would look at, from the defensive side of things, is what are your 30, 60, 90-day plans, and continue to really look at that, build those out. What's the worst case scenario? What does that look like? Do you have the cash flow? What's your runway? If things turned off and you got shut down, how long could you go with your current expenses? To Google's point, what would be the first things that you could cut? But then also, and even taking a step back, maybe it's not as much mindset, but maybe a tactic, is one thing that we did at Cornerstone is doing this for 22 years, we know that there's good times to sell and there's not so good times to sell a business, and we're slower in those not so good times. And so out of the last 20 years, you go back and the dot-com bust and corporate scandal, and then 9/11 was a knockout punch in 2001, and you couldn't do much the next year, and then it slowly got better. And then you had 6, 7, and half of 8. It's another 2.5 years, and then we all know what the Great Recession hit there. And now we had 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 into 20. So it was double what we've seen the last 2 times. So we actually looked and said, okay, we know this is not going to last forever. We actually hoarded a bunch of cash the last couple of years in the good years. And what we're doing now is really trying to put that money to work. And so when we're trying to buck the trend, and there's statements out there that you can make good money in good times, but you can make fortunes in bad times. And that's when, as Google was talking about, you make these big moves where everybody else is kind of sitting on their hands or just playing defense. You can make quantum leaps to get ahead of your competition. And just a couple of instances of that. I was talking with a colleague of mine, and they were talking to the McDonald's franchise down in Brazil. I forget what years this was. but they were obviously, the market leader in fast food down in Brazil, and then they went into some recession, and they cut their spending by their advertising by 50%, saying, well, yep, everybody's going to be not moving around as much, and we're going to cut back accordingly. While Taco Bell and another franchise increased their spending by 40% during that same time frame. And it was over about a 2 to 3 year period. But when they came out of that and it was back to quote unquote normal, McDonald's had lost 60% of their market share in that 2 to 3 year window because they were not advertising, and they were kind of lost in the shuffle a little bit. Talking with a restoration company in this space just recently, and they said, look, what it's allowed us to do is, again, we kind of created our worst case scenario, but then we got above it, and they've been able to create a COVID cleaning and sanitation division or service, and it's allowed them not only to get a lot of very profitable jobs right now, but they've been able to get into some very big blue chip companies in their marketplace that they've been knocking on their door for a decade or more, and they couldn't get in there. And now their company who works with them isn't offering this service. So they're like, hey, get in here. When can you get in here? And they've been able to put together, first priority contracts and everything else with these companies. So when they come out of this, not only are they going to make it through stronger, but coming out of this thing, they're going to be that much further ahead with all these blue chip customers that they didn't have going into COVID. So they looked at it and said, okay, we're strong cash flow wise. We know what our position is. We know what our weekly cash flow looks like. Now, what can we do to take advantage of the situation? And that was something that obviously not everybody's doing, because he said a lot of their smaller, more mom and pop type companies are not offering this because they're like, it's just a fad. It's only going to last 2 or 3 months. Why do I want to scale up for just that short period of time? I'm just going to let it go and collect unemployment or just do my basic jobs. And when they come out of this, they're going to be like, what happened? We just, we just missed a huge opportunity, and are sitting in the back seat versus the front seat now.
Yeah, I think that one thing I heard in a previous event was, an acquirer is going to ask you the question, so how did you capitalize on that whole pandemic? And I think that is almost a stress test for the business to say, so how do you deal with hard times? And I think that's really interesting. So if let's start with you, Gokul, and then back to you, Scott. A question that has come up in numerous discussions is, if I am in a position of strength, like I'm actually not if I came into this whole period of time and I'm not in a bad position right now, if I was to say, what are some of the tactics or strategies, some of the decisions, maybe some of the purchase decisions that I should make right now that I'm going to look back in 24 months and I'm going to say, thank God I made those decisions, because we are really in a good position now. Gokul, what would some of those be?
This is a great question. So if you're an acquirer today, or if you're looking to expand, I would look at, just like when the equity markets, go down, a lot of times there's great companies and their stock prices are at a sale price pretty much. And we are starting to find some of the same things in restoration today. And there's nothing wrong with the business long term, right? So if you analyze a target and you're looking at, 3 quarters, 4 quarters out, we're going to be back to normal. But you may find some owners that are tired, that are close to retirement, that don't want to rebuild coming out of this. I think those opportunities are great in creating win-win for both you and the seller. So I would look for those kinds of opportunities also. And then organically, just to add what Scott was talking about earlier, I'm talking to, one of the best things about my job is I get to talk to restoration entrepreneurs all day, every day. That's pretty much what I do. And it's amazing and fascinating to see how many bright people we have in our industry. And what I'm seeing is there are companies that are actually growing in this environment, to what Scott said. They're getting to corporate cleaning, they're getting to other areas to get into huge accounts, that previously they were not able to get into: environmental cleaning, duct cleaning, indoor air qualities. I mean, it goes on and on. So they're innovating, they're starting small, they're learning new skills, they're responding in a very strategic focus. And then I talk to other entrepreneurs that are absolutely paralyzed, and they feel that the only way is to cut. Okay. And then I'm talking to another bucket of entrepreneurs where it's hyperactivity without focus. So they got 20, 30 action items. They're all important. They all have to be done yesterday. So what I would encourage everybody to do is try to get to that first bucket where you have a strategic focus. If you have a lot of money, or if you're well capitalized, be disciplined in your acquisitions. They're going to come. There's going to be great companies out there where the owners, like I said, are just tired. They've approached this maybe not in the optimal way. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities there. If you're a smaller company, that are not in a place to acquire companies, et cetera, where you just want to have a healthy company for yourself and your family, I would strongly encourage, and I do it myself. I own other companies. I own 4 other companies here in Orlando under a holding company. And one of the first things I did when all this happened is just did a simple 1-3-5 plan. It's a little one page. You can Google it. If you want to ping me, I'll be happy to send you one, which was just a 90-day plan. It's one initiative. It's one goal for each company. And then you have 3 little objectives under that one goal. And I have it stuck up here on my wall. And, you could do that. And it keeps you really, really focused. I have a home services company here that does pool repair and screens, et cetera. And my number one focus here was, I just wrote it. It's just to keep my team intact. And then everything else flows from there. And it just kept me focused. So if you're a smaller entrepreneur and you're like, I don't want to grow, I just want to have a healthy company coming out of this, I would strongly recommend just go do a simple 1-3-5 plan. It'll take you 10 minutes and that will get you focused. It'll keep you, I think it's kind of like a rope that gets you to the other side.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy to send you one, and you can send it out to everybody after this.
Absolutely, yeah, and we'll get that out to the whole community. Scott, I want to just build on the question with some of the momentum that Gokul built there. 24 months from now, Scott, someone's in your office. They show you what they did during this whole COVID thing. Your eyes light up, Scott, and you say, wow, you made some of the right decisions through that. What were those decisions, Scott?
Yeah, I think the first thing is talent. And when I say talent, there's probably 2 key areas. Number one is building up your management team. Again, and if you're a smaller company, just having key employees, because what you don't want is to say, hey, look how great my company is. And, I do this, I do that, I do this, I created this. Because as a buyer, I go, boy, Leighton, if you're the man and you did it all, what happens if I buy your company? And even if you want to stay, but you get hit by the proverbial bus, everything's in your head, all the relationships are with you and everything else. So number one, build up that management team. Make sure that you don't have all the relationships with the customers or suppliers that are bringing you business. But also in times like this, I would take a look at the talent pool that just came out to the marketplace in the last month. Take a look at anybody that's below average, and get rid of them and find new talent. There's a lot of great talent out there right now. Take advantage of this time, because we all think it'll last forever, but it won't, and things will ramp back up. But now is a great time to really increase your the talent on your team. I would say a lot of us, all our service companies, we all have different systems and processes. It kind of is our secret sauce, but a lot of it again is either in your head and you train people and it kind of passes down. But what happens if, again, I buy your company? Will I get that tribal knowledge? So to use, your system and put all those processes and systems down, not only just into a book, but into, templates and things like that people are actually following. So it's not just, oh, yes, we have a process, which is better than, yeah, I have a process, it's in my head, but no, we have a process and here's the system and here's how everybody uses it on a daily basis. Because I know as a buyer, I want something that's replicable, that I know that's consistent, that I'm going to generate the same consistent results, which are going to give me the same consistent cash flows. And that's what I'm buying. I don't want to see something that's a yo-yo, or 1 year we're up, the next year we're down, or margins are all over the place. So management, process and systems documented. And then I would look again at customers and suppliers from a concentration standpoint. Is one insurance company giving you 90% of your work? Again, good for cash flows, but what happens if they switch to someone else or whatever, one of your referral sources gets acquired and they have a different relationship with someone else. And now, you didn't do anything wrong, but you just lost that whole line of business. So for many buyers out there, they want to see that top customer being no more than 25% of your business. So if you've got a well-diversified company, you've got a good management team, your process and systems are documented, and you've got a good track record of going up. One thing that you and I talked about before is what we talk about here at Cornerstone is sprinting to the finish line. What happens, unfortunately, is most business owners don't know exactly when they're going to get out or why they get out, and a lot of times the number two reason why business owners sell is they're burnt out. It's, they wake up one day and it's just not fun anymore. There was some triggering event or it just came on over a period of time, but all of a sudden it's just not fun anymore. And what happens when it's not fun anymore? You're usually not driving sales and growth. You're starting to check out of the company, and you're watching your sales and profits do this. Well, I think Gokul will agree with this, that buyers don't care what you did about back in your prime or what you did 3 or 4 years ago. What they care about is what did you do in most cases, what the last 12 months. And not even just 19 anymore. It's what are the last 12 months or TTM or trailing 12 months, and what do the next 12 months look like as credibly as you could project them. So you could be a business for 30, 40 years and just hang on to that business because you just emotionally can't let go, or you're not sure, you don't want to make that tough decision. For 12 months too long out of 360 months, and it can affect 30, 40, 50% of the value, or it might not be a saleable company at all. So I think, to be able to have that plan, have the team, have the right documents and systems, have the customer concentration, and then show that it's scalable or it's resistant to different stress tests. You walk in and you can show all those points. Gokul, I'll basically say, hey, how many buyers do you want us to line up? And then from a size standpoint too, size does matter. A lot of times people want to see there's different groups of buyers that will come in at different points. So any size company is saleable if they have a lot of the things that we've talked about. But you get over $1 million in EBITDA or cash flow, and that opens up a certain buyer. But then you get to 2 million or more, and it opens up a much bigger pool of buyers. And so if someone had 2+ million plus all those other factors, those are the companies that are fun to sell, because you can really we can bring multiple buyers. You can really choose as the owner, which buyer is the best fit for you, and choose what's important to you. And it's not always price. It might be structure or protecting my employees or legacy or culture or whatever else it might be. So it just gives you chances to go out on top and go out on your terms versus somebody else's at that point in time.
Mm-hmm. No, thanks, Scott. That's great perspective. And that leads well into this next question, Gokul. I'm sure, Gokul, this isn't the first time somebody's asked you for, can you give me a checklist, like what are the things I need to do? But one of the things that what you were saying, Scott, that triggered in my mind, and it fits well with this question, is that there is talent on the market, and not all of it is talent that you want to hire. Some of it is talent that are services that can actually help you get your business in order. Things like CPAs, things like maybe even some management consultants. Heck, maybe an MBA student that wasn't able to find a placement. There's people out there. And I think we can all agree that there's all areas of our businesses where they're not as tight as they could be. And so if a person had some bandwidth, Gokul, and Scott, feel free to build on this, but if a person had some bandwidth or they were willing to access some resources to kind of begin to kind of get the house in order, so to speak, give us some of the things on the laundry list. What are some of the things you'd have people do that would really begin to get the house in order?
So I think, you start with, where you are mentally, just to what Scott said, whether you're burnt out, can you stay in the business long? Can you grow the business? Can you not go? I think it's more of a personal check, because businesses fit into your life, not the other way around, and I think that would be the first one. You take inventory of where you are in your life and your career, and do you want to put the effort to build your company back up again? Do you want to exit? You need to get clarity on that, and I think once you do that, there's a lot of things you can do to drive the value of your business. You obviously want to get all your financials in order. You need to know your metrics. You need to know your KPIs in your business. You need to have your employees in order. You need to make sure you've got the right people, doing the right things, totally accountable, for everything, and I think also, this is a great time. Like if you are the center of your business, it is a great time for you to work on your business and give your team some extra responsibility. Is what I call the hub and spoke. If you're the hub of all the activities in your business is unsellable. Okay, I mean, you're going to feel great coming into it every day, but no buyer is ever going to buy that business. So if you got the hub and spoke mentality, I would say it's time to get away from that, and start diversifying. So my top top four really would be: have a personal inventory, see where you are. It's a great time to reflect, when things are maybe a little bit slower. Get your financials in order, know your metrics, know your numbers. Hub and spoke, which is look at your employees and see who can take on more responsibility. Can you make this a self-managed business? Those kinds of questions are really, 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 really critical. And then your last one is, if you have too much customer which I call the Switzerland structure, so if you have too much customer concentration issues, if you're working on just one TPA or one insurance agent that's your uncle that's giving you a lot of business, really take inventory. This is a great time to use some of your secondary services to get into big accounts. So that would be maybe my top four. Now I have a book on my website, How, When, and Why to Sell Your Restoration Business. And I talk about 7 value drivers, and I can probably talk a whole hour about it, but those would be my top 4 in a nutshell.
Excellent. Yeah, no, thanks for that insight, Gokul. Scott, I'm curious, Scott, from your perspective, before we move towards kind of a final question, Scott, what are some of those myths? What are some of those lies that you find yourself dispelling on those initial exploratory calls with business owners considering a sale?
Yeah, I think Google nailed the number one on the head for sure. I think the other one is I can sell whenever I want and it won't affect the value. Okay, when I'm 65, I'm going to sell my company, and when you're 65, is that 2015 or is that 2009? Because your business could be exactly the same in revenue, same in EBITDA, same management team, but those are going to be 2 different values because there's more risk in 2009 than there was in 2015, or at least perceived by the marketplace. So I think, to going back to our earlier point of planning well in advance, because that way, give yourself kind of a 2 to 5 year window, because that way, the M&A market ebbs, goes up and it goes down, and then it's going to come back up again. We've seen that, like I said, over the last 20 years, there was 2.5 year stint was really good. Sometimes it was bad, sometimes it was average, and it just continues to do that. It will continue to do that again. And I think just because they're starting to plan for that eventual exit, that's not like, well, I'm just going to do that a year or 2 before I'm going to sell. I mean, that's still better than what most people do. But doing that today, because just doing all these things that we talked about, creating this holistic company, that's just good business. That's going to allow you to not be part of the business as much. It's going to allow you to have better margins. You really work on diversifying your customer base. It's going to be all those things that are just going to make you a stronger company, a better company. So whenever you do decide you want to exit out of that company, it's going to give you more options and more choices again. And at the end of the day, that's what most of our clients want, is for us to, package up the company as best as we can, make sure we talk to all the right buyers, not putting an asking price on that, create that auction, confidential yet auction-like environment, and then having multiple buyers there and giving them options. Because that way, whether they, thought the business was worth $10 and when we got 12 or we got 8, they truly know if there was 4 offers on the table and everybody that should have known about it knew about it, they got that best offer and they can choose who they want to go with. And it's that peace of mind knowing that they got there's nothing that was left on the table, so to speak. We've had business owners that got great offers but couldn't sleep at night because it was an unsolicited offer. They just didn't know, is this the best the market could bear, or is there better out there? And it just eats at them. So I think by planning ahead of time and then knowing that, okay, I can be ready anytime in the next 5 years to sell my company, that's going to give them the options to kind of, it's tough to, time the market, so to speak, with the stock market, but it is with this market as well, but it is a little bit easier. There are longer periods of time when the market is good or it's not good. And I think that's one that most people don't look at as, it won't make a difference. Whenever I want to sell, the market will be great. And the rising tide kind of lifts all the boats up, and brings them all back down again when the tide goes out.
If I can add really quickly, Scott, I think you made a great point. There's in our industry, last year and even maybe first quarter of this year, a lot of acquisition was happening, right? A lot of consolidation is going on. And, a lot of our clients were mentioning us, they were getting calls, from other competitors to buy them and making offers that were maybe beyond what they thought they could get for their business. And I think if I was going to add is, I think if you're a seller of a business or your company, you're doing yourself a huge disservice if you don't talk to multiple buyers, no matter who comes knocking on your door. Okay. And however sweet you think that deal is, I think if you're not talking to a lot of people and if you're not courting a lot of buyers simultaneously, I think you're doing yourself a huge disservice.
Yeah. There's a reason that those companies and private equity firms spend as much time and money and hire guys with six-figure salaries to go out and talk to all of you, because they know if they can get you into a one-on-one negotiation, they're going to get a much better deal than if you went to the marketplace and there was other buyers at the table. It's kind of that economics 101, supply and demand, so yeah, I would echo that thought as well.
Yeah, well said. I think that's excellent advice, guys. And as I look towards, we're coming towards the close of this panel, and a really good fitting question that I think is a great question to end on. I think it was Hegel who said that, we learn from history that we don't learn from history, and I think it's a great question to end on, which is when we look at the last 10 years, we look at the last 10 years, 15 years, we've been through some ups and downs. I think of the 08, 09, there's been reference to that. So the question is what can we learn from the past that will serve us well today as it relates to strengthening the value of our company and growing the value of our company coming out of this? Why don't we start with you, Scott, and then we'll end with you, Gokul.
Yeah, I think, as we mentioned before, the ones that really, first of all, shore up your business. So, you understand cash flow, you understand, what you've got going on, you've got worst case scenarios played out. You shore up things from the defensive standpoint, but then, as I mentioned before, fortunes are made in times like this where you can make big leaps, and you can do great things. But even if you don't, I guess I would look at that and going, I'm going to make a little bit more aggressive moves. Gokul and I are both talking. We're hiring people in our industry where other people are probably going to be letting people go or fall out of our industry because we know where we're going. And I think you can make moves in times like this that times will get good again. I mean, you look at at 2008-9, banks said there will never be another lending environment anywhere near this again. Well, it took Google maybe 3-4 years, and all of a sudden, one bank got aggressive, then the other one had to get aggressive, and boom, 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 banks were aggressive again, and that helped the last 5-year run. So things will get good again, but trust yourself, trust the business that you have, and don't be afraid to make some moves now. Make moves in measure. If you make a move and it doesn't work out, it's going to drive the car off the cliff. Well, I wouldn't make that move, but take some risks that you think are calculated, and I think you'll come out of this thing better than you went into it.
Great, well said. And Gokul, over to you. And what would be your final 30 seconds on what can we learn from past dips in the market that will serve us well today as we make decisions in our businesses around the value and maybe the eventual sale of the company?
Right. I think here's what I think. I think if you look at the history of the market and you look at great investors in the market like Warren Buffett or any of these other guys, one of the things I think, and even great entrepreneurs, they have an uncanny ability to stay calm. Mm-hmm. So I would say, if I was, in closing, I would say, in times like this, I think it's really important to have a hobby. And I know that's crazy, but I think it's really important. Either it's going for a walk, it's time, you need to take a break. And two, which I'm doing myself all the time. And two is I think it's really important to ask the right questions. If you ask why, then your mind is going to give you all kinds of reasons why you should not do something. I would encourage all the viewers today is to ask questions of what and how. Okay, what can I do? How can I get there? So I think it's really careful in managing your state of mind and asking the right questions, because if you start to ask the right questions, you'll start to find the right answers to move your company forward.
Excellent. Well, I really thought this was a fantastic discussion. Scott, Gokul, thanks for being so generous with your time and with your advice. Anytime you can get advice that normally you have to pay like a premium for, it's always fantastic. But I know
I'm sending you the bill, so.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think I've got some old Hotmail email address still kicking around here. So, but I want to thank you both. That was really fantastic, and it's kind of like having a conversation with our heart doctor, where we know it's one of those important life discussions, and then we go home and we look in our cupboards for something to eat, and we're like, how seriously do I want to take this important life advice? And I think if there's anything, it's being locked up at home allows us to look around and say, that's true. I mean, I've got some other priorities besides this business, and I've got family, I've got interests, and so this is a very timely discussion. So thank you both, and I just want to plug both of you guys. We'll certainly be sharing some resources after this webinar. If you're listening and you said, "Man, my friend or one of my partners or one of my business partners really should have watched this," we're gonna provide this video to the community so that you can enjoy that